Well, a very good day to all of you. I'm Randy Johnston. It is such a pleasure to have you along on this session on Accounting Suite. And we're going to actually talk about Accounting Suite at the end of our time together, but we want to introduce a concept to you where we're calling it a prop solution. You'll understand why as our time together unfolds. Again, I have the pleasure of having a guest with me today, Kurt Kunselman. I'll have him introduce himself here in just a minute. But we really believe that there is a need for market solutions that actually fit between entry-level solutions and ERP solutions. And we believe many businesses have those needs. The bottom line here has been quite simple, frankly. I think I actually met our guest today about a decade ago. And I think we've got real kindred spirits in this area because as soon as I saw what he was trying to do with inventory and e-commerce and the vision and so forth, I was just excited about that. But we're going to spend some time to define what a process and resource operation planning tool is, or prop. And we're going to talk about how these fit into the market. And then I'll explain along with Kurt what really makes AccountingSuite a prop solution. Now, today's course is offered for CPE. We're so happy to have so many of you here earning that CPE today. And we will talk about how to get that CPE in just a minute. But I am Randy Johnston. I have been around the accounting profession as a presenter for 40 plus years. I've been on the top 25 thought leader list since 2011. In fact, I've been added to the list for 2022. And have been on the top 100 list since 2004, inducted in the Accounting Hall of Fame in February of 2011. I write frequently for the CPA Practice Advisor and other publications, and you can certainly learn more about me on my personal website or one of our business websites. I am so pleased to introduce you, and I will have him introduce himself, Kurt Kunselman, who's the COO and product architect of AccountingSuite. So, Kurt, I appreciate your time today, and hello, and what would you like to say about yourself?
Hey, everyone. Thank you, Randy. A huge fan of Randy and K2E, and now getting a chance to meet the CPE Today team. Just first off the bat, my background is in accounting. It was public accounting back in the day, and then got into like investment banking side of it, software IPOs, and then did do accounting software consulting for about 12 years before starting this company. And I was working with Sage, Intuit, SysPro, a little bit of Microsoft. So that's kind of my background that got me here. So just so you have it's kind of some ideas why AccountingSuite even started. So, but other than that, just big fan of accounting technology, did work in the music industry for a while, have started a few companies, and I've gotten really interested lately in sort of like blockchain and things of that nature since 2013. So yeah, thank you, Randy.
Beautiful, Kurt. And in fact, we could have a conversation about blockchain. We could have a conversation about music. I mean, these guys could go an hour, I think, on each of these topics. But today we're not going to go down that blockchain rabbit hole, and we're not going to go too far down that music rabbit hole, although both of them would be a pleasure to speak with you about. We're going to stay focused around these opportunities that we think that are in this lower mid-market. All right, well, let's talk just a bit about some of the other mechanics for today's session. DevMatics actually builds all types of tools for business, including this platform that we're running on, custom enterprise software and mobile apps and workflows and so forth. And they basically have done a beautiful job building the platform that we're running on today. This CPE Today podcast is for free, and it is done in cooperation with my K2 business. We have a weekly podcast that's produced twice a week. We're trying to give you the latest and greatest in technology and accounting and business knowledge. You can look on the CPE Today website and see some of the past podcasts, and you can listen to those as you choose. That is done for free on Apple Podcast or Spotify or Google Play, SoundCloud, and other places. Live like today, twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays. So do check out CPE today for other options. Now, earning credits for today's webinar is simple. It's really just 2 minutes, a short 5-question quiz along the way. And you can we'll issue a complete certificate through our education partner, K2 Enterprises, and you get free copies of the learning materials. You have the ability in today's session to ask the instructor questions. And if you'd like to get a link on this, you can see it's in your materials. Now, if this is your first podcast, or when you attend another podcast, you can use the one free podcast code to get an additional CPE credit. So today you're going to earn 1 credit, and then you can take another one of our courses for an additional credit. Everything inside the material are copyrighted, and they're the property of the respective owners. That's true for AccountingSuite. That's true for K2 and other vendors that we mentioned. This session is for educational use only, and it's we're going to make specific recommendations, but we expect you to do your own due diligence. And of course, the images come from Artworks and Flat Icon and others. Now, the attendance prompts today will be to confirm your engagement. We'll be doing one about every 12 to 20 minutes, about 4 per hour. And I hope you can respond to those. Remember, you have to respond to at least 3 in this session to get full credit. When the prompt comes up, select a response to confirm your attendance, and the system will track your responses. And then we may or may not announce the attendance prompts, but I think you'll also see today I'm going to ask a few questions along the way. Your certificate will arrive in your email account when you answer 3 of the 4 questions, usually within 2 business days of the event. If you have any questions or issues with your CPE certificate, let us know. We also ask you to complete a course evaluation immediately after you complete the podcast. It should pop up in a browser window automatically. We really value the feedback. We want to understand what you want to learn about. We want to know what went well and poorly in today's session as well. 1 to 3 minutes max to complete that. So do take some time to do the evaluation and ask some questions. Kurt is a sharp guy, and I want to leverage his time and talent here today. And we'll try to be watching on the questions as well. We're happy to explain things in a different way. And, you know, as much as we can, we're trying to share our insights with you as well. If there's technical issues, I actually have additional Devmatics and CPE Today personnel standing by to help. And I know they've been answering a few questions for you as it goes. So let's get into the thick of this if we could. And so we've been struggling for a while to come up with the term that I think describes products in the class that are above entry level, yet below ERP. And PROP is the acronym that I think I've settled in here. Process and Resource Operation Planning solutions are for growing small, medium businesses that need more than entry level. Now, as it turns out, a lot of the entry-level players out there we're quite familiar with, the likes of QuickBooks or Zoho or Xero, just to name a few, are out there. But the fact of the matter is that so much of the times with an entry-level solution, you have to add add-ons. And it makes it a lot more complex. And what happens is if you get big and you need inventory, you have to go to a mid-market product, or at least historically you did, until solutions that fit in the prop category came along. Prop solutions are this middle of the road type of a point, and they're a far lower price point with ERP and far more functionality than entry level. So, Kurt, if I could actually have you step in here now for a minute and just talk to me about some of the things that you've built out in the AccountingSuite platform that really support some of this thinking.
Great. Thank you, Randy. That's fantastic. So when you think, coming back to what Randy said, you've got QBO, let's say like zero, and we're in on the cloud-based solutions, and then up here you have like a NetSuite, but in between you have inventory, right? You sell like you sell product, and then of course like we watch Shark Tank and stuff like that. There's a lot of Shark Tank companies out there, right? Trying to get on the Shark Tank. So some of the things that we've done would be like a great example is assembly with multiple layers. So in ERP world, there's, they have those, and it's very, very sophisticated, complicated. In small business world, sometimes that's too much, right? So we just make it very simple. Here's an item, it's an assembly, and look, there's some different layers or some different parts that make up that assembly. Cool, simple, let you manage your product. Now you know how much inventory you have on hand. Another example would be drop shipping. So for small companies, a lot of times they do contract manufacturing, or they have other vendors that warehouse their products, because small businesses can't always afford gigantic warehouses. We always say, hey, Amazon's a warehouse. So you've got third-party fulfillment, you have digital supply chain, and you have like third-party, like, warehousing. And so that's something that we really are proud of, is that we offer drop shipping, so that you as a business owner, or for the accountants that have to, help the business owners figure out how to, build their accounting systems, we've made that option. So to kind of feed off of that as well is consignment. So a lot of us smaller inventory businesses, okay, we make products, but we go put them in stores, but we don't get paid for that until it sells. And that's a very 2022 business model. So example, I send my stuff to Amazon. Amazon does not pay you. They pay you when it sells. If it doesn't sell, they send it back to you. So, another piece is we do e-commerce integration, so that as the orders come through from different stores, and it'll come through to one centralized area, and it can tell you how many of your inventory that you have on order, and then as it ships, then it relieves the inventory. A couple other things are the multi-location. So you have your one of the funny kind of taglines when we first started, Randy, it was like, so what does AccountingSuite let us do? Let you know where your stuff is, because that's where people had the biggest issues. Where's my stuff? So we, like, your inventory could be in a van, it could be in a garage, it could be in a warehouse in Florida, warehouse in Texas, warehouse in California, warehouse in New York. You need to know where your stuff is, right? And so that was, and then adding to that is, if you need to move your inventory from one location to another location, we built in warehouse transfers. And notice that I'm using the word location. The kind of more, standard industry term would be warehouse, but these days you can't, that kind of pigeonholes your inventory, because inventory is not always sitting in a warehouse, it's somewhere. We just need to know where that is.
Yeah, and Kurt, I remember your stuff days, by the way, because I think I pointed out George Carlin's stuff along the way. But see, you're really in the thick of this issue, because so many small businesses have stuff. And the problem is, it's one thing to do professional services billing, which, by the way, AccountingSuite can do. And there's all sorts of very sophisticated features you've built this way. But notice this stuff tracking and the ability to do operations inside these systems instead of just accounting. And so much of the time, I do refer to it as accounting software like the rest of the industry has. But let's face it, Kurt, both you and I have been around big systems and small systems alike through our careers. And the complexities of the mid-market and upper tier systems, which we'll talk about here in just a couple of slides, it's just more than some people need or can handle. And so I hope you're getting a little bit of the drift on this. And I think it's really time for our first question, if we would, today. So I'm going to have our team launch that for you. Prop that we're talking about here helps us manage. And I think the choices are processes, resources, operations, and all of the above. So hopefully, as you've heard us, discussing this, notice that process workflow is a big deal. In fact, a lot of times when I'm doing mid-market selections, I do process maps before we get any vendors involved. And, when you think about resources, it's people resources, it's stuff, to use the Kurt word there. And it's also operations. Okay, who's going to handle the stuff? Who's going to do what along the way? So are there other things that you might say are part of prop as well, Kurt, or do these three cover it?
Really, that's processes, resources, and operations, and sometimes maybe a little bit of maybe planning, forecasting, some budgeting type things. That's always it's of course, as we both know, the biggies have it. There's even solutions that are just like standalone. That's all they do, and it's of course it's but yeah, that's probably outside of that, because kind of management accounting-ish cost of kind of thing.
Yeah, and I wanted to spread the scope there just a little bit on you, because the thing is, we've limited it somewhat to these 3 points of discussion, but there's more. And it turns out that if you're trying to build a system by having third-party add-ons, you might have to buy something for inventory and buy something for e-commerce and buy something for credit card processing and so on. And my rule of thumb through the years is with all mid-market products, you're always going to have third-party add-ons. It just depends on how many. And there are still features that you need third-party add-ons, I think. And I think even in your system, Avalara's sales tax is a good example of a complex thing that we are trying to track. So you've had enough time, I think, to reflect on this. We believe that the best answer here is all of the above. And it looks like a good number of you responded just that way. Well, in the 80s, and I believe this was actually done in 1987, I came up with this concept of a pyramid of the accounting software market, labeled typically tier 1 through tier 5 from the top to the bottom. And, the fact of the matter is that ERP, enterprise resource planning, was used to define these upper level products. In many circles, ERP is a 4-letter word because it's hard to implement and tough. And you can see we've included statistics here from the Census Bureau, the number of companies in the US market, the approximate revenues, and so forth. But you can see ERP is reaching down into about tier 3. And my belief is that prop can also reach up into tier 3. Now, I'm going to be working with this a little bit more, because prop might go a little higher and ERP might go a little higher or lower, one could argue, and maybe entry goes a little higher. There may be some overlaps here. But conceptually, what I'm trying to get you to understand is that we believe that prop solutions fit above entry level and below ERP. And there's a number of vendors who actually have a process and resource operation type of product, and they're not ERP. And we're going to try to help you understand what the difference is along the way here. Now, another key thing in this market is that the higher end solutions are sold by field salespeople, as opposed to the mid-market products are sold by value-added resellers and partners. And the reseller model was very dominant a generation ago, but more and more publishers started doing their own direct sales and implementations because the complexities of the products became so great. And there's been a large shift in the market on that. At the low end, most of this is sold directly to end users, telesales, and so forth. When it comes to implementation, the high-end systems are often implemented by very high-end consulting teams or by the partner resellers along the way. And again, there's some wonderful partners around the country. My rule of thumb traditionally has been it takes about 130 partners to cover the US geographically. But you know what? Nowadays, since so much is done online, we don't have that regional restriction that we did in the 80s and the 90s, where travel was more of an issue. Now we can remotely do things or through SaaS do so many more things. And on the low end and the entry level, typically the end user or some, just a few specialized consultants do the implementation. That's kind of the way that all works out. So if you consider the pyramid here for just a minute, there's a whole lot of products in all sorts of categories. And Kurt was referring to that earlier with QuickBooks Online being a software as a service runs in a browser product as opposed to QuickBooks Desktop, a traditional legacy locally installed product. And what we're trying to do here is help small businesses. So small businesses currently represent the largest number of businesses in the United States. And that's an inviting market for accounting and business management and payroll and all sorts of other solutions. And part of the issue for you, either for your own business or your client's business, is to try to develop or determine the relative merits of all these specific solutions. So again, we're going to find a lot of options in these spaces. Now, numbers wise, there's about 32 million businesses here in the United States. But about 26 million of those don't have employees. So the fact of the matter is that leaves us about 5.5 million or so that, have employees. But small businesses are about almost 100% of all firms. And you have 99.7% of these with paid employees. A fairly large number of them are exporting, which is also a thing that we did not see historically. And, the 31% of these have values and getting about 460 billion of exports done. About half have private sector employees and about 40% have private sector payroll. Now, again, I'm a strong believer that small business is the backbone of the business operations across the U.S., with roughly 62% of new job creation done in small businesses. But one of the banes of small business is failure. 67% survive 1 year or longer. Take the converse, that means about a third, unfortunately, do fail. And most of them fail within 5 years from a cash flow problem. But the good news is 50% of the businesses that were started between 1994 and 2019 have survived at least 5 years. And we know because of the pandemic, a lot of people have resigned their jobs and they're taking off in new ventures and starting a lot of new businesses. And this happens every time there's any sort of big downturn. But again, only 1/3 of small businesses survive 10 years or longer. And that's really a sad thing. So we'd really like it to be, a longer life here. Now, in terms of diversity, about 20% are minority owned, about 5% Hispanic, about 2% are African-American owned, and about 10% are Asian owned. About 18% of small businesses are owned by immigrants. And the top two industries where immigrants are active are hospitality, accommodations and food services, and retail trade. So these businesses, are driving a lot of the economy as we see it, but a whole lot of those businesses have these needs that we're talking about today. The ownership of small businesses by millennials is lower than age 65 or is over is very significant. And self-employment by millennials has been gradually increasing since 2013. Because of the pandemic, we saw an increase of people working from home by 20%, and those numbers even could be greater. So, at this point, what I've tried to drive home in this section was that the accounting market levels fall in multiple tiers. There's entry, small, medium business, enterprise, all the above. What do you think? And we'll give you a chance to think about that for a moment. But I'd refer you back to my accounting software pyramid. Again, you see that there was, various tiers in that area. But your high end and your low end and in between. So it looks like you've had enough time for most of you to respond. So I think you will also agree that the answer here might be all of the above. Well, so at this point, I'd just like to remind you of what's in entry-level accounting solutions. They've got usable but limited general ledgers. The reporting tools are weak. During the pandemic, I've actually wrote a report on reporting tools, of which I found 94 reporting tools. Hard to believe, but generally reporting is unsatisfactory in a lot of these platforms. There's limited accounts receivable and accounts payable, and there's a little bit of reconciliation, and they vary from a very low price point and sometimes free. If we go to the high end of the market now for a minute, the ERP solutions, they're far more comprehensive. There's CRM, there's procurement, there's production, there's distribution, there's of course accounting. Oftentimes HR is incorporated. There might even be workflow and corporate performance and some governance pieces in there and business intelligence and assets and eCommerce. And they generally have a high price point. So these systems are for bigger businesses, and they're a lot more comprehensive, but a lot more complex. So that then brings us to prop solutions. And again, Kurt, I'm going to have you step back in with me if we could here, because I think prop solutions extend capabilities and it minimizes your use of add-ons. And I think that these solutions generally have the same or superior accounting options as an entry-level tool. So I don't think I'm wrong on this particular claim that every prop solution that I've reviewed has the same capabilities or more than QuickBooks or Xero or Zoho. So Kurt, on that particular claim, am I smoking dope or have I got it right? And it looks like
just
you may have your camera off or it may have failed on you, whichever way.
Yeah, my camera's being a little bit cranky. I'll try to troubleshoot that. But what I'm going to try to do is search my camera and get back in and see if I can get it to enable here. But you're right on. I mean, there's as you said, it's just right between that kind of mid-market and entry. There's just been like a missing factor there. And one of the things is that kind of going back is that when you talked about the businesses, like they're going out of business, right? Well, we all heard the term cash is king, right? And cash is king, service business, totally 100%. We all get that. There's one thing though that's been missed for many years, which is in product world and inventory world, gross margin is king. And what happens is the information for, if you're running an ERP enterprise level, they got a lot of systems that are keeping the inventory and the costs up to date. But what I see a lot of, and I heard a lot about this even when pre-AccountingSuite in my former life as an ERP consultant and working with Sage and Intuit, and is that companies, by the time they figured out what their gross margin was for, let's say let's take a year. Okay, 2021. I'm a product company. I don't even know what my gross margins are for 2021 till like April 14th of 2022, because my tax CPA is like, I went through all your books. This is what you're, or let's say, well, it's March 14th, right? So I went through your books. We're gonna submit, but I have to tell you something. Your gross margins were 1%, or maybe even worse, your gross margins were negative, because the business owners, they're just trying to get sales out the door, and they're not able to track what their gross margin is. So when you talk about business failure, that is a key component, Randy, of especially for those small product-based businesses, because they don't even, not only half the time do they not know where their stuff is, but half the time they don't even know if their gross margin is positive or negative. And they don't find out till it's too late.
Yeah, and what a wonderful thing that we didn't prepare for. I knew some of these things would happen to us, and that's perfect, Kurt, because you made me smile. Or I was fortunate early in my career to be IBM trained on the DIMP model. And what that was about is how to manage gross margin. And the primary tool that we used was DuPont modeling. And every single startup business that I've done, I've applied DuPont theory to. And what that does is it helps you focus on gross margin. It helps you focus on other key triggers, of which there's 20 in these businesses that you can actually push. And one of those is, inventory controls, and one of those is cash collections and so forth. But it's such an important thing here. And frankly, when inventory gets out of control, or more specifically, dead inventory gets out of control, or you don't have enough, or you got too little inventory, those things can all cause problems. And of course, the idea of sales management got me involved with CRMs very early in the existence of CRMs, because I needed to have an opportunity and track the pipeline and so forth. And, another piece that so many of our CPA friends use is write-up solutions. A client will bring a shoebox of receipts, or bank statements, and throw them in and say, hey, here's all the transactions from the business for the past year, and I need a tax return. Good luck. So doing accounting after the fact is called write-up solutions, and I think a little bit something about that too.
Oh, thank you, Randy. That's it's something that, when coming back a little bit, like you mentioned, like we're talking about prop, and hey, the gross margins and growth. Every company starts somewhere, right? You start, like, there's say on Monday, you and I are like, hey, Randy, let's start a company. Well, by Friday, hopefully we have a bank account and we're ready to get up and running. And what we realized was, what, there's the inventory, there's the services, there's that part, there's the operations, but every company starts somewhere. So, and ideally, every company gets an accountant sooner than later, worst case scenario, bookkeeper, whatever that is, and just at least goes to that, like you said, shoebox. And it's funny, one of our employees, going off your shoebox, calls it, boot box, because they like boots better than shoes. But yeah, that's the classic story. And so we built it out so that so we have a write-up product, so that when these companies start out, they can at least work with their accountant, and their accountant can have AccountingSuite as their back end, while the accountant's doing the work for them. But as they grow, then it's like, oh, you're already inside the AccountingSuite ecosystem. You're already in the AccountingSuite. Now you're growing. You're in, say, year 2 or whatever that is, year 3. Now you're starting to get your operational process together. Okay, let's set those up in AccountingSuite now. Okay, great. You're starting to get your suppliers and everything. So it gives you that upgrade path, actually. And if you don't mind me saying, that one of the kind of the unique ideas that we did for the write-up solution came up with a term called like bank-based accounting, which is basically take those statements you're talking about, it like in your shoebox, right? So basically it's just bank-based accounting. I could log in to every single, say your client has like 4 banks. You could log into each one of those, run the reports that, like especially a lot of these banks are doing their own kind of reporting and categorization, or you could just bring all that into one centralized bank-based accounting system and see everything all at once. And one of the kind of cool things that we've come up with is what we call it's like a cash flow report, not a statement of cash flows like the GAAP accrual type, but more of a cash flow report, which is top of it says, here's your beginning bank balances for all your different banks. Next section says, this is where the money went. This is where the money came, like where the money in, money out, and here's your ending bank balances. So a mom and pop is like, okay, that is something I can work with. Because most mom and pops, when they're in that kind of write-up kind of level, you talk to them and say, hey, we do accrual accounting. There's a lot of like empty conversation at that point. They're like, accrual accounting, what is that? Right? So you kind of lost the client. They're like, okay, I'm not sure what that is, but can you tell me if do I have enough money for next month? Right? That's what they really want to know. And so that's something we made it so that the write-up, the cash flow reporting, you can look at it on a month by month, year by year. So you can get that really financial health of a small, mom and pop size company that is really good for write-up. And, plus, as you said, with the shoeboxes, it allows you to get the data in there and then do their, tax returns. So but that's something that we're really passionate about, is that, we brought the write-up product in there after, of course, we built the original AccountingSuite product, but we saw that was a need, that they need to be able to go from day one, that they need to, that there needed to be some kind of upgrade path, and that they need to start with really encourages starting your business with your accountant, which is
well, and really the way you're describing this, and this bank-based accounting, I think is a brilliant concept that you've evolved inside this product. And notice that you were also talking about multiple bank accounts, and the view to get them all in one place is part of the magic here. Traditionally, a lot of the entry-level softwares only allowed originally one bank account or very few bank accounts, 1, 2, 3, 4. Even the big mid-market products often had, cash accounts or bank account limitations. So going back to your cash is king type of approach, in effect, you can do all the cash management. And, for our attendees today, I don't want you to think that we're, talking out of both sides of the mouth here, but it turns out that this AccountingSuite platform that Kurt's responsible for can do things for public practice accountants to help their business. And likewise, businesses can have all the tools that they need without getting all sorts of third-party add-ins. So again, if I just go back to the inventory and sales management, it's all in one place. How many times have you gone in somebody's office and they're rifling here, rifling there, looking for stuff? And this tries to put everything to run the business. I'm going to use the operations word again. Everything for our operations is in one place. Every resource we need is in one place. All the processes are inside this one place. So I just did them in reverse, but that's prop coming back at us again. Now, one other sophisticated thing, Kurt, that I know you've built is consolidations. And, just to think about the way you might consolidate things. And again, I'm not trying to be big business here. I'm trying to be small. Much of the time you may have multiple different ownerships, or you may have different items. In my own life as an entrepreneur, I started multiple businesses, and wound up being fortunate enough to buy a building. I had a separate company to do that, and so forth. And for consolidations, I actually wanted to see my entire financial position in one place. So just talk to us about how your consolidation capabilities work.
Great. Thank you, Randy. And we took the kind of the when we first started, we were saying consolidation. We kind of took like a multi-entity approach, because what we noticed is that when you're in the kind of smaller companies, they weren't doing the advanced accounting to like consolidation. They were kind of doing like a multi-entity approach, and was like, okay, that makes sense. So we kind of say, hey, like you said, even these small entrepreneurs, they might have 3 companies. And they're like, well, I got this company to do this thing, I got this company to do that one, and this company to do that. And it's like, oh, okay, well, so you're going to need something like to really quickly, as a, as a financial advisor, I need to be able to run something either for you, or as the business owner, entrepreneur, you want to be able to see, okay, I want to see how my 3 companies are doing together. And there's a third actual player that loves the multi-entity approach, and those are the investors. So when you have a angel investor, if you have a couple companies that are on AccountingSuite, you can actually go in, and even as an investor, go in and actually look and see, okay, here's the 3 companies, here's how they're all doing. But that's the so we went with that approach, and like balance sheet, income statement, statement of cash flows, and be able to see, okay, I see my 3 companies. This is kind of the net effect. And one thing that was kind of interesting, Randy, when we built it was, I used to do it. There's FRX, which you may remember that software. I used to do a lot of FRX building for companies and build their reports out, and it was always like left to right. And I was like, okay, cool. I got 10 companies and I got to go all the way to the right just to see what the results are. And when we started building it on the web, it's like, wait, you know what? Sometimes you want to see it immediately. So we did something kind of interesting. We put the total on the left, and then you click a button, and then it pops out the detailed companies to the right, so that you get the instantaneous, like quick snapshot of how are all my companies doing. I want to kind of throw that out. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I was smiling while you were talking about that, because FRX was a client of mine, and in the days of FRX and Crystal Reports and F9, that's kind of what we could do. But so much of the time, these third-party reporting products were purchased because the systems themselves wouldn't do what you'd want. And notice Kurt's just described kind of an innovative way to handle this, with the concept of putting the total over on the left. Well, yeah, that makes perfect sense, if you're the user of the system. And, you say you learn something new every day, I suppose. You have told me that before, and I'd kind of zoned it off. But this idea that the angels could get back on the back end here, it's another real key feature inside your system. Further, again, I'm not trying to bash here, so don't hear it like that. But if you're using an entry-level product like QuickBooks Online today, you have to buy an instance for every company that you're running, and then you got to try to figure out how to put those together if you're going to try to, take all your holdings. And again, I'll just say my building company and my, operational company, and maybe another interest that I have, and so forth. That might mean that I have 3 subscriptions. And the way your product works, Kurt, is it's a single subscription approach, right?
It can be. It just depends on different types. It's different kind of packages that we have.
Understood. So again, we're not really trying to put that, but notice right away that there's just differences in how these things are handled. And I think just because I'm going to pull this up, one other thing that I know that you've got inside the system is this, besides your write-up tool, which we've kind of talked about, but it's customizable capabilities. So what would you say about those features? Because remember, most of the entry-level systems, what you buy is what you got. You might be able to add a field here, or some tiny change, but you're pretty much whatever the vendor's built, that's all you get. So what happens in your world?
Awesome. Okay. Love this question, because when we're speaking with business owners, I would say we do a thing we call a demo and discovery, right? And I would say 90% of the time, 90% of the time, it's like, oh, we love your software. However, can it do this thing, right? 90% of the time, they're going to have one extra thing that the vanilla software can't do. And I don't, and again, we're talking cloud, especially cloud. So coming from a world of where, I was working with Sage, and we actually had customization companies that I would go out to. I had like 5 different customization vendors that I could always depend on. And in cloud world, it's like, okay, well, this is what you get, and just try to figure out your processes to work with it. Well, we talk about processes, right? Well, this is business processes that, these people come in. It's like basically business process customization, right? And it's like, great, accounting suite, love the inventory, you can do prepayments, sales orders, all this stuff. But we need this one little thing that our business depends on. And it's like, okay, well, that's cool. You're going to get the vanilla package. And guess what? We have a customizations team that can do cloud customizations. So it's one of the things we're very proud of. In fact, on our website, I think it's like the second or third, panel that pops up when you come across. And it's, on our, home. Yeah, okay. So they got it as like the first one. Cool. So that's one of the things is, so we do like customization specific to your company, but also what we've found too is that, and we did this a lot in on-premise, was what we call extensions too. It's what we'll call same stack extensions. And basically what same stack extensions mean is that, this is AccountingSuite, and sometimes we get customization requests, and let's say we get 3 of them. It's like, okay, that sounds like an extension that we can create that the clients can use for specific situations. So we have found that is another. Those are like kind of like, we'll call those like kind of public customizations, where the other piece, which was like a business process customization specific to your business, would be what we call like a private customization. And of course, those come with a fee. I mean, I don't want to pretend like that's free or anything, but when you look at it and you go, okay, there's a very reasonable monthly amount, and then you're going to be able to customize it to what fits our business process. Yes. Okay. That's awesome. We're excited because we already know what they did. They went somewhere else and they tried to find out and everything. And it was going to be like, they would have to get a loan, typically, going back to what we were talking about earlier, Randy, about that kind of between small to kind of, medium ERP. Sometimes the price is so high that the business has to have a loan. And some of these companies are starting to offer financing packages, if that tells you how much it is. So they're really excited, and that customization piece has really been has been a winner for us. And I can't reiterate enough that it is literally 90%, Randy. It's crazy how, and these are even we're talking the small businesses, by the way. Like they're like, well, I have a catering business. I love what you do, but we have this one little thing we need to be able to track, like orders that are on trucks for specific things. And it's like, okay, well, we're doing that through the software. We don't have that one specific thing. Yeah, well, we've been doing that on a spreadsheet. That's usually the magic word, by the way. Yeah. We track this on a spreadsheet because none of the systems can handle it. And we're like, okay, let's see if we can do it. Oh, cool. We can do that with customization. Okay. It'll be ready in 2 months. All right. Sounds good.
That's wonderful. Well, we've been talking a little bit about, just your offerings and so forth. And again, your website, I think, represents this pretty well with your offering being cloud-based and it's, multi-channel inventory and integrations and so forth. So I think that part of it is actually fairly clear. But one other, key thing here is just how many modules that you have. And again, I knew in our time together, we weren't really trying to talk about accounting suite per se. We were trying to talk about this concept of there are products out there that have entry level accounting capabilities plus enough things that you can actually run a small business that has inventory and e-commerce and so forth. So, I know the AP and AR, the purchase order tracking, the sales orders, and so forth are all inside your system as well. But are there other key things that we should mention or be aware of?
All right. So um, one of the things that's very, very, very interesting is prepayments for purchase orders and prepayments for sales orders. And here's the scenario. A lot of times, especially in contract manufacturing world, you're a small company and you need to outsource some of your manufacturing, or maybe to like a vendor, and you want to send a purchase order to your vendor, but you have to prepay it, right? And what the pain point we found, a lot of systems were like, you have to go create a bill, or you have to go create a bill and then a fake payment and all sorts of other like these crazy workarounds. And so, well, that was one of the biggest, we've simplified that so much where you can accept the prepayments on a sales order, and you can make the prepayments on your purchase order, and it's still sitting there as a purchase order waiting to be billed, or it's sitting there as a sales order waiting to be invoiced. So when you get into that's the operational part, that's the planning cash flow. But for true accounting, when you do ship, or when you ship the product, or when you do your invoice your product, that's when you recognize the revenue, and that's when the actual sales invoice will hit your books, and vice versa. When you did the prepayment on your purchase order, well, you might have done that in January, Randy, but you may not even get the product until March. So doing bills and inventory in January, then having to reverse all that in March because the system can't handle it, is very time consuming for accountants. So those parts, that piece right there, we found is super accountant friendly, is prepayments on purchase orders and sales orders, because it does create kind of a nightmare for our like accounting friends.
Well, that makes perfect sense because, my consulting business, I always require a deposit. As I say, I won't leave my home until you've got a deposit down. And that's really just the way I do business. So the fact of the matter is, in our traditional, fairly sophisticated tracking systems, deposits are kind of hard to track.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a long doggone time for us to work through the methodology of being able to, relieve services against deposits. And notice, I'm less worried about inventories in this case, but you're absolutely spot on. It's very common that you have to make some sort of a prepayment. Now that I think about it, when I purchase inventory for use by our team, our credit history is clearly good enough at this point, but we still have many situations where we have to pay some portion of it because the tickets are so big, right?
And great point there, Randy, because it's interesting when you were talking and you brought it into service, because these rules still apply. Like if traditionally it's like, okay, well, we are only going to do a sales order for, say, we'll only do a sales order, like a company might say, we'll only do sales orders for a product. Wait, time out. Like, you get a contract from, let's say I have a web design company, I get a contract for $50K, put that in the system as a sales order, because that's an order for your services, and that may last for 12 months. So as you do that, you're like, well, we need 50% up front. Well, okay, order goes into the system for the services, you get the 50% up front. That needs to kind of sit out there, because you're going to have to do those services, and that way, as a business owner, a manager, a service manager, whatever that is, that, okay, we've got this 25 orders that we need to do these services for. So some of those same rules, it's great when you're doing these, actually apply. And that was a great scenario that you came up with there.
Yeah. And see, as it turns out, I'm just feeling the pain of so many small businesses that, maybe see the TV advertisements and say, oh, it's all easy if you do it this way. But the fact of the matter is, we've got a whole lot of small businesses, I think, on the wrong platforms, simply because it's been popular. It's been, marketed broadly. And, you've just been quietly with your team getting her done, as they say in my part of the country. And, the capabilities inside your prop solution and others like you, I think, need far more attention. And as I think I had on this slide, I think AccountingSuite is really an amazing prop solution. I'm so pleased what you and your team have built. Just can't tell you how much difference I think it makes for the businesses you serve. Well, I hate to say this, but it is getting close to our time, and I could just chat with you for more and more time. But AccountingSuite's type is an entry-level solution, a prop solution, an ERP solution, or all of the above. So what do you think here? Because it turns out that these levels of systems vary in their complexity. They vary in their costs. The number of third parties that you have to add changes a lot. And again, I don't think that AccountingSuite is third party free. Obviously, we talked about Avalara sales tax being able to be added in, or especially things like Shopify being able to be added and so forth. You've got lots of capabilities, but the fact of the matter is that the higher you go up market into the props, into the ERPs, the more that's built into them. So what do you think? It looks like most of you have done a response. AccountingSuite's type is entry, prop, ERP, or all of the above. And I think the correct answer is prop in this particular case. Well, realistically, what we were trying to get across today was to give you some characteristics of the SMB market and why prop made sense. And it is clear that there's a need for accounting capabilities beyond the entry-level products that are integrated. And this idea of having process and resource and operations for planning purposes all in small, medium businesses, to me, make great sense. Integration with the very minimal third parties is better. Long-term associate of mine used to call it one throat to choke. And I understood that because, hey, you don't want to have finger pointing going on in this. And I think it's another characteristic of prop. There's very few third-party players along the way. So, Kurt, I can't tell you how pleased I am to have you with us today. I'm sorry your camera shot craps on you there, but hey, it does happen. So for attendees, just a few closing administrative items. Again, if you just take a short 5-question quiz, you can actually earn the credits. For those of you who attended live, you'll earn those credits automatically. We'll send you a certificate. You have the rights to these materials. And beyond that, remember that if you attend a future podcast besides this one, just use the code ONEFREEPODCAST and you'll be able to attend another one of our courses. And remember to connect with us on social media. You can subscribe on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of those places will be there with you. And also you can stream our show on your time through Apple or Spotify or Google or on SoundCloud. And remember, you can earn CPE credits anytime on that. You basically can listen to any of our content at no charge, however, if you just want to expand your knowledge. So we appreciate your time today.